Hello, this is Vulturefire, and this is part 9 of my field guide for the Vortex, Primal Draera, which is the second of 3 forms of Draera. So, Primal Draera's main themes, Curse and Crystallize, AoE attacks, and splitting on death. This guy has 1400 health and 400 shield, so right off the bat, it is bulkier than Draera was by a little bit. Draera had 700 health and 1000 shield baseline. This is at 1400 health and 400 shield. So just 100 more. But that is before we factor in the death split, which we'll get to later. So when you start the fight, it's going to have Divinity 4 and Fortress 4. So if you have Gall, it can immediately get rid of the Divinity for you. However, you may not want to. You may want to save it until you can set up buffs for it, because Gall is affected by things like critical or mighty or the enemy being shocked and so on. The opportunity attack on this is it deals 12 damage. It will give you Curse 2, Crystallize 2, and Nullify 1, which can be kind of obnoxious, honestly. The Nullify in particular for some characters is pretty annoying. If you're playing Catan, it's not a huge deal because the Nullify will immediately get used up by the Vengeance that you will get from the level 7 passive. Assuming you're at least level 4 passive, assuming you're at least level 4 Catan. And let's be honest, you probably shouldn't be doing depth 4 runs below level 4. You can. I did in my full playthrough, but it's not recommended. And then finally, on death, you're going to summon 4 Soul Fragments. And it's going to summon 4 Soul Fragments. It's going to divide Divinity 8 across them if it's only able to summon 3 due to lack of space. Soul Fragments do start with Summon Divinity on their own, but because Draera is 3 spaces wide, it's possible that you can have 2 you have 2 summons, and then when you kill it, it will summon 3. The 4th summon will fail, and it will divide Divinity instead of that. So let's talk about its actions. Primal Draera itself only has 1 phase. Unlike Draera, which had 2, there's just the 1 set of actions, and there are 5 actions in this list. The first one, it applies AoE, Leech 8, Curse 4, and Crystallize 4, and then just to the player gives Curse 4 and Crystallize 4. This is a lot. This is death for summons if you don't have very good protection for them, especially if idols are active to increase the numbers even further. With 3 idols active, those 4s become 6s, and now you're looking at 12 AoE damage before you factor in the leech. So if you have Purity, you will be able to block things in that order. If you're able to play something like Warcry Plus or Protect the Root Plus, which will give Purity 2 to you and your allies, it will block the Leech and the Curse, and they will only have the Crystallize left. Then on turn 2, it's going to deal 24 AoE damage, which means, again, you and your allies. And then just to the player, this is not AoE debuffs, it will give the player Frail 2, Nullify 2, and Madness 1. Nullify 2, again, can be annoying depending on which character you are. The most annoying thing with Nullify is always that there's a chance that it will eat something really, really good from from either Manic Presence. Manic Presence will try and give you Fortress, Manic Presence will try and give you Powerful, Manic Presence will try and give you Frenzy, and the Nullify will eat it, or an idol will try and give you a good buff, and Nullify will eat it. And that's really annoying. And the Madness, of course, can be obnoxious to deal with, but is usually not a huge concern on its own, but it does vary. And it also depends on what your max hand size is baseline. If you're at 10 max hand size, you're usually fine working with the reduced hand size for a turn. But if you already have something like Mind Bloom, which reduces your max hand size, it could be really dicey. Turn 3, it's going to do 4x6 damage. It's going to apply Weak 4, Vulnerable 4, and Decay 1. And then turn 4, it's going to shuffle 1 Draera's Blessing into the deck. It's going to gain Divinity 3, Purity 3. It's going to heal for 120 health. So Draera's Blessing is... I don't have a screenshot of it, but I did think to at least grab the text for this one. It gains Madness 1. Draera's Blessing says that you will gain Madness 1 when you draw it, so just immediately on drawing it. And then, if you play it, you gain Curse 4. And if you don't play it, you'll gain Crystallize 4 at the end of the turn. So this is obviously annoying, but it's not as immediately lethal as some of the other curses that you can see, or some of the other blights. Like, this won't kill you. This won't aggressively kill you in the same way that, what's the name of it? Grasp of Shadows will kill you. Like, Grasp of Shadows, like, loses you health and loses you shield at the end of turn. Draera's Blessing doesn't. The Crystallize can be a problem, but it's also 0 mana to play out, unlike Grasp of Shadows. So worst case scenario, you can play this out, eat the Curse 4, and then hopefully cleanse it off. And that is only on turn 4, so it's only once. You've got a bit of time until it happens. The Divinity and the Purity can be annoying. This is the only instance of it gaining Divinity during its action. So it starts with 4 and then it gets 3 more every 5 turns, starting on turn 4. So it doesn't stack Divinity anywhere near as much as the base form does. And then finally, it's going to deal 4x4 damage to the player. It's going to give them Frostbite 6, and it's going to apply 12 Frost. Which is a minor nuisance. That's only going to be 1 freeze. It's not going to like multi-freeze you unless it's really managed to stack things up. You'll notice it doesn't gain any powerful here. It doesn't really stack Divinity. It does apply a lot of debuffs, and that's the main threat because its base damage is relatively low. It's 24, 24, 16 on the base damage. The vulnerable does increase it slightly. The frail does reduce your ability to deal with it. The crystallize does increase how much damage it does. But if you have cleanse, this is not that bad. I did say at the end of the last video that I think that this is slightly harder than regular Draera, but it's, I would say, a relatively small step up. Like if you say that Draera is like a 6 out of 10 difficulty, this is like a 7 out of 10 or 6.5. It is attacking you in different ways, but it's not really attacking you harder, especially if you're actually just looking at the before it's phase 1. I would go so far as to say this is exactly on par with regular Draera in terms of how much threat it poses. However, once you kill it, you have to deal with soul fragments. And as I said, you'll be dealing with 3 or 4 of these. They start with 300 health, they start with 100 shield, and they start with Frenzy 1. That's something you need to be aware of. They don't have a way to get opportunists themselves, but if they do get opportunists, or you have ways to trigger the opportunist attacks, they're going to do 3x3 damage and increase that damage by 1. So triggering opportunists on the same one multiple times does get dicey pretty quick. They don't start with any divinity normally, but they will if Draera fails to summon some of them. So, they have 400 health, they start with Frenzy 1. You want to get rid of that Frenzy, because if you don't, it's going to be bad. So, what this means is, time your kill carefully. Ideally, you want to kill Primal Draera when you either... So there's a few ways to get around it. So, if one of your summons kills Primal Draera on its turn, so not on your turn, you've ended your turn and the summon is taking its turn. If that summon kills, if a summon kills Primal Draera, it will split, but it will not, but the soul fragments will not get a turn until you have gotten to take your next turn. Another way is that, of course, you could kill it with, or other ways you kill it with debuffs. So if Primal Draera dies to Curse or Poison, or Burn, or any number of other debuffs at the end of its turn, then it will split at the end of turn. Soul Fragments will not get an immediate turn, and you'll get a full turn to try and deal with this Frenzy. The other way to do it that's more brute force is if you have just the ability to let it live until you're ready, you kill it, and then you kill it when you have some way to apply Frost or Arcane already in hand, so that you can just immediately handle the soul fragments. Frost is obviously the best option because that will just outright, or even better than Frost would be just killing them. But if you can just freeze them all, they won't immediately do their thing. If you can Arcane Blast them all, that will at least stop them from getting the Frenzy turn. If you combine both, they won't do anything, and they will have and they won't have a Frenzy turn, which is great. All sorts of good things. The other thing here that's fairly niche is if Idol of Hunger is active, it will have Berserk. There's no way to... If Idol of Hunger is the only idol active, then guaranteed you'll have to deal with a Hunger version of Primal, which means it will have Berserk, and Berserk will mean that when it dies, it won't fully die until the end of its turn. But if you fight Aspect of Destruction, and you choose to take the Bloody Furor card that Aspect of Destruction drops, that card gives Berserk to an enemy. So if you kill Draera, you kill Primal Draera, after giving it Berserk with Bloody Furor, you can ensure it dies at the end of its turn, and you won't have to deal with the Soul Fragment getting a turn before you can get the drop on them, basically. So let's talk about what they actually do. they have 4 actions that they're going to cycle between. The first 2, it's worth noting, if they have Frenzy, they're going to do both of these immediately back to back. And that's 4x3 damage, 12 of a random status, and then the second action is apply Nullify 1 and Curse 3. So if you kill Primal Draera, and you do not do anything to the soul fragments right off the bat, and you didn't block one of them from getting summoned, you're going to take 4x12 damage. You're going to take 12x4 of random status, which is not going to be a fun time. You're going to get Nullify 4, and you're going to get Curse 12. That's not great. You really want to avoid having that happen. And furthermore, it's going to deal, on turn 3, it deals 2x5 damage and divides powerful 6 among all enemies. This divide powerful among all enemies means that it is more dangerous than it seems, because when you go into this their third turn, or their second turn if you weren't able to stop the frenzy, they will it will look like you're taking a total of 2x20 damage, which is 40 damage. That's annoying, but it's not lethal usually. But what you're really taking is you're going to take 10 damage, 2x5 damage, then powerful 2 to all of them. Then you're going to take 4x5 damage, then powerful 2 to all of them. Then you're going to take 6x5 damage, then 2 powerful to all of them. Then you're going to take 8x5 damage. So instead of taking 40 total damage, you're going to take 10 plus 20 plus 30 plus 40, which is 100 damage, which is 2.5 times as much damage as you thought. Soul fragments are dangerous. You want to kill them quickly. You really, really want to be in a position where after you kill Primal Draera, they aren't going to get their first turn, or they're only going to do this, and then you do not want all of them to be alive when they get to this turn. If all 4 of them are alive and all 4 of them take this turn, you are going to have a bad day. And honestly, I'm not sure how your deck got to this point, because I would or you got really, really bad turns from idols or whatever, because I would usually say that your goal should be, once the soul fragments come out, you want to be able to kill at least one of them immediately, ideally. And if you can't kill them immediately, then at least you freeze them and arcane blast them, and then kill 1 or 2 of them on the next turn. At absolute most, you want 3 of them alive when this happens, and ideally only 2, if you let them have this turn at all. So that is all of the Primal Draera fight. The first form, like I said, fairly straightforward. Bring Cleanse. And then time the kill carefully so that when the soul fragments come out, you're prepared to deal with them. And that is Primal Draera in a nutshell. And by a nutshell, I mean a 13-minute guide explaining everything that it does. So, that's it for this time. There is one more part to the field guide for the Vortex, which is Formless Draera. That will be coming out tomorrow. I'm going to be recording it right after I finish this, so unfortunately, if you have any feedback on the Draera parts, I recorded all of them in one go. Sorry about that. But if you do have any questions, leave a comment. I'll answer it as best I can. There's a link to the official Discord in the description. There's a link to the full playlist of the whole field guide in the description. The dev loves to hang out on the Discord and answer questions, which is how I have so much information about stuff. So anyway, I will see you tomorrow for Formless Draera. Until then, toodles.